Welcome to the regular news report. We're going to be presenting some key information we've extracted directly from recent sources.
That's right. Today, we're looking at a whole range of political and economic activity in the North Atlantic region. Just the raw information.
So we'll start with the news reports. We'll be covering the Suðuroy Tunnel project update, then a story about the Ombudsman and a digital ticket scheme.
After that, we have a summary from the Nordic Finance Minister meeting, a look at the Faroese bank's half-year profits, and finally, a report on enforcement against illegal workers.
And then in the second part, we'll get to the opinion pieces.
Yep. We'll cover the Fishermen's Union's stance on Russian sanctions, an argument for a Danish state loan for that tunnel, and highlights from the Folkeflokker and chairman's address.
Okay, let's jump right in.
We really have to start with the biggest story, which is the proposed Suðuroy underwater tunnel, the Suðuroy Tunnel.
This is a huge project, a mega project, really. It's currently in the public hearing phase.
And the plan is to get the pre-project proposal to the Lagtinget, that's the parliament, for its first reading before Christmas.
And the scale of this, it's a 23-kilometer tunnel. That would make it the fifth and by far the longest submarine tunnel in the network.
Right. And the whole point is to connect Suðuroy, which is the southernmost island. It's home to about 4,500 people.
Who are currently pretty isolated. It's a 2-hour ferry from Tórshavn, the capital.
Exactly. So this tunnel would have that travel time and, connect basically 99% of the population to the main tunnel network.
But the cost is where the debate really heats up. The estimate is 5 billion DKK.
And that is a truly massive figure for a nation of this size. It's hard to really overstate it.
Which is why the big financial bodies are, let's say, concerned.
Very concerned. Both the Faroese Economic Council and Landsbanki Faroe, the national bank, have come out and called it financially irresponsible.
And what's their main reasoning for that?
They're looking at the country's long-term welfare challenges and a workforce that's pretty stagnant.
So not a lot of growth to pay for it.
Right. The council chair basically said the investment is just too large and the traffic will never be enough for it to pay for itself.
He specifically compared it to the Suðuroy Tunnel, which works because it connects much denser areas.
That's a different kind of project. The Suðuroy Tunnel is seen more as a demographic fix, not an immediate economic one.
And that's exactly the government's argument, isn't it?
It is. Prime Minister Aksel Johannesen is arguing it's essential because it's a demographic solution.
Suðuroy has the highest unemployment,
Right.
And the lowest birth rate.
The highest unemployment, lowest birth rate, and the lowest average income. So they're facing some real challenges.
And the Prime Minister is pointing to the Suðuroy Tunnel as a kind of proof of concept.
He is. He says that tunnel actually reversed some negative demographic trends there. He's really framing this as an investment in keeping the nation connected.
And he's also making a financial argument comparing it to the current ferry.
Yeah, he notes the ferry costs about 80 to 90 million DKK a year to run.
And a new ferry would cost 1 billion DKK, with a lifespan of maybe 25 years.
So the government's calculation is that over 30 years, the money saved from not running that ferry service would cover a big chunk of the tunnel's cost.
But not everyone agrees with that math.
No. Landsverk, the traffic agency, did their own analysis.
And what did they find?
They suggested that a shorter ferry route between Suðuroy and Sandoy would actually make more economic sense, even when you factor in buying a new ferry every 25 years.
So there's a real tension there between the demographic goals and the pure financial numbers.
A huge tension. Okay, so moving on from that mega project.
Right, to something a bit smaller but still significant. The Ombudsman issued a serious reprimand to the National Ferry Service.
Strandfarer Skip Lansens and also the Ministry of Fisheries and Transport.
And this was all about a new ticket pricing system they rolled out in March of 2025.
Yeah, the issue wasn't the price itself, but how you got the best price. The lowest fares were only available if you signed up for their digital system and bought your tickets online.
Which the Ombudsman found to be, well, legally questionable.
Right. They said you can't basically force citizens to join a specific digital scheme just by making it the only cheap option.
There's no legal basis for it.
Exactly. Neither the ferry service nor the ministry could show the legal authorization they needed for that kind of requirement. So, a pretty serious official warning.
Okay, let's shift gears now to the international front.
Finance Minister Ruth Vang was in Brussels for the annual Nordic Finance Ministers meeting.
And the main topic on the agenda was preparing for turbulent times?
Yes. Specifically focusing on the preparedness of their financial infrastructure and pushing for closer Nordic cooperation on that.
She also had some important one-on-one meetings.
She did. She met with 2 EU commissioners Hanover Kunin, who deals with digitalization and security, and Valdis Dombrovskis, who's on economic affairs.
So this is all tying back to that framework agreement the Faroe Islands signed with the EU last year.
Absolutely. The talks were about digitalization and trade, so they're clearly still working on building out that relationship.
Okay, now for a look at the domestic economy. The bank's half-year results are in.
And the aggregate pre-tax profit for all Faroese banks in the first half of 2025 came in at 393 million DKK.
Can you break that down for us?
Sure. Faroe Banki had 190 million, Battery Bank had 178 million, Norøya Spertikasi was at 20.3 million, and Suðuroy Spertikasi reported 4.5 million.
But the report mentioned that for two of the banks, the result was actually down from last year.
That's right. The main reason cited was lower net interest income, which happened because of lower interest rates.
So things like write-downs and higher salary costs also played a part in that.
They did.
All right, our last item in the news section is a law enforcement matter.
Yes, the police deported 6 men from Lithuania. They were found to be working in the Faroe Islands without permits.
And how did they get caught?
It was a bit strange. 5 of them were in a company car, and the driver was reported for driving under the influence.
So when the police investigated that, they discovered the others and their lack of work permits.
Exactly. The driver got a DUI fine, and all 6 men were fined 1,000 DKK each for working illegally before being removed from the country.
Okay, that covers the news reports.
So now let's pivot to the opinion and political side of things.
And first up is a very strong statement from the Fishermen's Union. This was in response to the Foreign Affairs Committee recommending sanctions against 2 Russian fishing companies.
The union's chairman, Jan Højgaard, was very direct. He said the fishing agreement with Russia is the livelihood for many fishermen and their families.
He warned that cutting those ties could do irreparable damage.
And even risk the loss of some of the newer fishing vessels that depend on that income.
His argument was essentially that the Faroes shouldn't sacrifice its own citizens' jobs in what he called an emotional struggle.
Right. He also made the point that, in his words, the entire Western world cooperates with Russians on some level. It's a really difficult position for them.
It really is. Now, circling back to the Suðuroy Tunnel, there's a specific proposal on how to finance it.
Yes, an opinion piece from Folketing MP Anna Falkenberg. She's advocating for a Danish state loan.
What's your reasoning there?
It's purely about the money. She argues that a state loan would guarantee the best possible terms, the best interest rate.
And that could save a lot of money.
Potentially up to 800 million DKK, according to her article.
But she also talked about safety, didn't she?
She did. She stressed that no matter how they finance it, safety has to be the top priority. The tunnel must meet the highest standards, like the ones used in Norway, even if that costs more.
So use the loan to save money, but don't cut corners on safety.
That's the core of her argument.
Okay, finally, let's look at the key points from an address by Beinir Johannesen. He's the chairman of the Folkeflokkurin party.
The Conservative Party. And his speech was really a broad critique of the current government's policies, especially on the fiscal side.
He started with the deficit.
He did. He pointed to a current deficit of 173 million DKK, with projections showing it could approach a total of 1 billion.
And his point was that this isn't acceptable during what are otherwise good economic times. He wants to control spending.
Right. And he also took aim at how the government is treating the primary industries, so fishing and aquaculture.
He talked about rising taxes and fees.
Yes. He said some fees on things like petrol and energy have gone up by over 100%. His argument is that this hurts the competitiveness of the country's most important industries.
He also had some things to say about social issues like housing.
He called for changing building regulations to make it easier and cheaper for people to build their first home. He thinks unnecessary rules are just driving up costs.
And on fishing, he wants more stability.
He's insisting on bringing back 12-year fishing permits. He argues the current short-term permits create too much uncertainty and stop people from making big long-term investments.
The address also touched on a growing social problem.
Yeah, he spoke about rising drug abuse among young people and actually referenced a recent award-winning poetry collection, Sverd Orkidé, by Vombjört Vang.
As something that's bringing important attention to the issue.
Exactly. And then to wrap up, he outlined his party's family policy.
Which involves a higher child allowance.
A higher phased allowance.
Yeah.
He claims their proposal would give a family with 3 kids an extra 10,100 DKK a year.
So it's a pretty comprehensive address, really laying out the opposition's platform.
It is. It's focused on, fiscal responsibility, supporting those key industries and also tackling social issues like housing and drug abuse.
Like and subscribe to Pulse Fundamentals for more content like this. Sources linked below.